Have you ever wondered where the word shaman really comes from? And what kind of world gave birth to this drum-beating, spirit-journeying healer? Today we venture across the frozen forests and sweeping steppes of Siberia to witness living traditions of spirit travel, altered states of consciousness, and ancestral communion, practiced by as many as a quarter of the region's 40 million inhabitants. These practices are often gathered under the term Siberian Shamanism, a 5,000-year-old spiritual complex in which the shaman acts as a mediator between the human realm and the world of spirits, preserving harmony between people, ancestors, and the wider cosmos. To understand the origin of the shaman figure, the story begins not in New Age workshops or modern psychedelic ceremonies, but across the frozen tundra, deep taiga forests, and sweeping steppe of northern Eurasia. To understand later esoteric and entheogenic traditions, the journey has to begin in Siberia, where humans, animals, and spirits share a single living landscape. Across the circumpolar north, the horizon stretches in every direction, broken only by low hills, dark conifer forests, and the slow migration of reindeer herds. Winter nights shimmer with auroras that many people see as visible traces of spirits, while summer brings long days when the sun almost refuses to set. In this environment, survival depends on careful reading of tracks in the snow, subtle changes in weather, and the habits of animals that are treated not only as prey, but as powerful persons with their own will and dignity. The world is never empty. It is saturated with invisible presences, from ancestor souls and animal masters to sky deities and underworld beings. The figure of the shaman emerges here as the specialist who knows how to speak, negotiate, and travel among all of these forces. Siberian shamanism is not a single monolithic religion, but a web of related practices and worldviews spread across an immense geographic range. In the first part of our journey, we'll trace the deep foundations of Siberian shamanism, starting with the Samoyedic speaking peoples, specifically the Nenets of the tundra, moving onward to the Evenki of the forests and other Tungusic peoples of the taiga. Then we will follow the great rivers and migration routes south and east into the worlds of the Yakut or Sakha, the Buryat, and the steppe traditions of Tangrism, eventually culminating in the impacts on other shamanic Asian traditions like the Mu and Ainu of the Korean Peninsula, northern Japan, and Russia's Far East. As we move, watch how these same core patterns, cosmic layers, spirit journeys, and transformed consciousness are woven and rewoven into a vast ideological tapestry. In these societies, the shaman is not a fringe figure, but a crucial mediator who reads omens, interprets dreams, heals illnesses, and maintains an often delicate balance between humans and the countless other than human beings inhabiting their world. To see how these ideas actually live and breathe, we need to descend into specific cultural worlds, starting with the Samoyedic traditions, specifically examining the Nenets of the Russian Arctic. Their reindeer, their tents, and their drums are not just ethnographic curiosities, they are keys to an entire way of understanding reality. Samoyedic shamanism, encompassing groups like the Nenets, Inuits, and Nganasan, features diverse shamans taking the form of healers, hunters, and clan leaders. These shamans use drums, spirit helpers, and elaborate costumes like triple crowns for different worlds, in a highly animistic system focused on local spirits. Among the Nenets, a core group within this Samoyedic ideology, who range across the Yamal Peninsula and other northern territories, the relationship between people, reindeer, and spirits is intimate and constant. Reindeer provide food, clothing, transport, and even the raw material for ritual objects, but they are also linked to powerful spirit masters who must be honored through offerings and taboos. When herds move along traditional migration routes, they are not only following good pasture, they are tracing pathways that connect different zones of the cosmos and different domains of spirit power. The social world of the Nenets is organized into clans and families whose ancestors watch over their living descendants, and whose displeasure can manifest in illness, bad luck, or misfortune during travel. Within this matrix, the shaman, whose role might be hereditary or marked by signs of illness, visionary dreams, or unusual sensitivity, learns to travel between the human community and the invisible society of spirits and ancestors. Inside the conical tent, the shaman's ritual takes place in a space already loaded with symbolic meaning. The fire in the center is the heart of the human world, where food is cooked and stories are told. But it is also an altar of sorts, a place where offerings to spirits are burned or placed. The smoke hole above is a literal vent for the fire's smoke, and a symbolic channel through which prayers, souls, and shamanic journeys ascend. When the shaman begins to beat the drum, the regular, increasingly insistent rhythm reshapes the atmosphere. The sound can be heard as reindeer hooves, the beating of wings, or the pulse of the universe itself. Through song, incantation, and sometimes dramatic physical gestures, leaping, circling the fire, or miming journeys, the shaman enters into a trance state in which perception shifts and communication with spirits becomes possible. In this altered state, the shaman may report traveling upward toward sky beings, or downward toward the dead and powerful underworld entities. The world is often imagined as a layered structure, with several heavens above, the human realm in the middle, and multiple underworld layers below, each inhabited by different classes of beings. This resonates with the idea of Loka Purusha, or cosmic man, which we discussed in our last video on Jainism. Both represent stages of consciousness rising from material or lower impulses toward higher awareness, framed respectively through experiential ritual and symbolic cosmology. The shaman's path is rarely straightforward. It can involve crossing rivers of difficult substance, passing through gates, climbing a cosmic tree or mountain, or negotiating with guardians who test the shaman's knowledge and resolve. The purpose of such travel is practical and urgent. A child might be sick because its soul has wandered or been stolen. A herd might be in danger because a spirit master has been offended. A storm may threaten a dangerous crossing. The shaman must identify the cause and then bargain, cajole, or even struggle with the relevant spirits to restore balance and bring back health, safety, or good fortune. From the perspective of later esoteric traditions, several striking motifs stand out in these Nenets practices. The tent as a microcosm resembles ritual spaces in many cultures where architecture reflects cosmic order, from temples aligned to cardinal directions to ceremonial circles marked as representations of the universe. The drum as a portable cosmos anticipates ritual diagrams and talismans that condense entire cosmologies into a single object used for meditation, magic, or ascent. The Nenets drum in ceremony, as a resonant guide between worlds, parallels the Hindu Om as a primordial vibration connecting the practitioner to the underlying unity of the cosmos. Nenet shamanism specifically highlights sacred dolls or idols on sledges, connecting to local deities and a strong shamanic tradition even into modern times. The shaman's journey through layered worlds, encountering tests and guardians, parallels visionary itineraries found in mystical literature, where the seeker passes through heavens or spheres on the way to a higher vision or union with a divine presence, as seen in Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, and Sufism. Yet, for the Nenets, these are not metaphors for interior psychological processes. They are embedded in a life world where spirits are real partners, and sometimes adversaries, in the struggle to live prosperously in a harsh environment. When we shift from the open tundra of the Nenets to the deep forests of the Evenki and other Tungusic peoples, the landscape changes, but the fundamental challenge remains the same: how to live harmoniously with a world crowded with spirits. The next step in our journey explores how the Evenki gave the world the word shaman, and how their rituals translate the language of the forest into human meaning. By following the arc of their initiations, we begin to glimpse how Siberian patterns echo through later esoteric and entheogenic practices. Among the Evenki and other Tungusic peoples of the Taiga, shamanism becomes a way of listening to the voices of trees, rivers, and animals, and of translating that language into guidance for the community. To understand how the term shaman left Siberia and entered global esoteric and entheogenic vocabulary, it is essential to pass through this dense, snow-laden world of pines, birch, and river mist. For the Evenki, the shaman is both hunter and diplomat, reading tracks in the snow and tracks in the soul with equal care. The Evenki live in a mosaic of forests, rivers, and wetlands, moving seasonally with game, and in some regions with semi-domesticated reindeer. Mobility is a way of life. Camps shift, trails crisscross, and the boundaries between one clan's hunting grounds and another's are as much marked by stories and taboos as by physical landmarks. The forest is thick with presences that do not appear in ordinary sight, but that manifest in dreams, omens, abrupt changes in weather, and the behavior of animals. Every mountain and river has its spirit master. Every species of game has its guardian, and these beings must be approached with the same etiquette and caution one would show to a powerful neighbor. In this setting, the shaman is a specialist who knows how to move, not only along the visible paths of the taiga, but also through the invisible paths that connect human society with the wider community of spirits. The Evenki rituals show how a layered cosmos, a world tree, and a vertical journey can emerge directly from lived engagement with a forest landscape. In Evenki cosmology, the universe is organized into multiple levels, stacked above and below the human world, connected by a central axis that can be imagined as a tree, mountain, pillar, or ladder. The upper worlds are the domains of luminous beings and deities, while the lower worlds are the territories of the dead and of darker, more dangerous forces. The shaman's task is to move along this axis when needed, ascending or descending to seek knowledge, retrieve lost souls, or negotiate with powerful entities on behalf of the living. Both the Nenets and Evenki envision a three-tiered cosmos of heavens, the human world, and underworlds, yet the Nenets emphasize shamanic mediation and spirit negotiation, while the Evenki focus more on animal spirits and the forested landscape as integral to cosmic balance. During rituals, the shaman may use a notched pole as a symbolic ladder, climbing it physically while singing of ascent through different sky layers. The drum, painted or conceptualized as a map of the cosmos, is beaten in steady, accelerating rhythms until ordinary awareness gives way to the focused, shifting perception of trance. The Evenki shaman does not journey alone, but relies on helping spirits, many of which take animal forms. Reindeer, birds, bears, and other creatures appear in visions, dreams, and inherited stories as guides, protectors, or transport across dangerous zones of the invisible landscape. Costumes and drums frequently incorporate images or physical elements of these animals: antlers, feathers, fur, or claws, binding the human practitioner to non-human allies in a network of mutual obligation. When an illness, misfortune, or hunting failure is attributed to a rupture in relations with spirits, the shaman's performance becomes both diagnosis and treatment. Singing through a repertoire of spirit names and epithets, the shaman identifies the offended or attacking being, then travels in trance to confront, bargain with, or appease it. Initiation into this role is often marked by episodes of severe illness, psychological crisis, or visionary disturbances that separate the future shaman from ordinary social life. In narratives recorded from Evenki and related groups, the novice is taken to the spirit world, where their body is cut apart, boiled, or devoured, and then reassembled piece by piece, reminiscent of the death and resurrection of the ancient Greek Dionysus and ancient Egyptian Osiris. Bones may be reforged as metal, flesh replaced, and organs counted and inspected by spirit beings, who thereby claim and remake the novice. This dismemberment and reconstruction is frightening, but it is also proof that the person has been remade into someone who can withstand pressures of travel between worlds. When the novice recovers and returns, they do so with new songs, drum patterns, and a changed relationship to spirits and community. From a broader esoteric perspective, these Evenki patterns resonate with other traditions in striking ways. The vertical journey through multiple heavens or underworlds echoes visionary itineraries from many regions, but here it is intimately tied to hunting, healing, and clan relationships. The world tree or cosmic pillar uniting all realms, parallels symbols found in Indo-Iranian, Norse, and later occult cosmologies. Yet, for the Evenki, it grows out of the everyday experience of living among actual trees that tower overhead and root deep into the earth. Initiatory themes of death and rebirth anticipate motifs that will later be taken up in mystery religions, alchemical texts, and modern psychological interpretations of spiritual crisis. But for the Evenki, they are specific to a forest-dwelling people negotiating with very concrete forms of danger and necessity. The question of psychoactive substances arises here as well, not as a universal key, but as one possible element in the shaman's toolkit. In some northern forest zones, the Amanita muscaria mushroom appears under birches and conifers frequented by reindeer, and stories circulate about altered behavior in animals that have eaten it. Reports speak of people ingesting the mushroom or the urine of those who have done so, suggesting complex practices of filtering and recycling its active compounds. The Western concept of Santa Claus may have ties to the Evenki peoples. There are theories that the legend of Santa Claus, while later merged with the life of the Christian canonized Saint Nicholas, encapsulates a shamanic tale where Santa's red and white coat matches the coloration of the Amanita muscaria mushroom. After picking the fungi, the shaman would carry the mushrooms in a sack when he visited the homes of village people. These mushrooms were strung on birch and conifer trees, the same trees we utilize as Christmas trees, to dry these mushrooms before consumption, visually reminiscent of Christmas lights and ornaments. Due to all moisture needing to be removed before consumption, the story goes that those who would consume these sacraments sometimes dried them further in a sock near the fire, a potential origin of our Christmas stockings. Amanita muscaria mushrooms grow under these birch and conifer trees, appearing like presents or gifts beneath the tree, which, after being picked, would be delivered by a shaman entering through a chimney area due to snow piling up around the living structure. This was particularly significant during winter solstice ceremonies, the time when Christmas occurs, which were important festive dates for far northern peoples. Reindeer accompany this interpretation through the connection of reindeer consuming these mushrooms and then shamans drinking the urine of the reindeer to have a more effective and less toxic trip. Unlike psilocybin mushrooms, commonly known as magic mushrooms, Amanita muscaria is toxic to humans, causing severe nausea, seizures, and coma. Consumed raw, they can be deadly. The ruminant reindeer, with their more complex digestive system, is able to process these toxins while receiving the full effect of the psychoactive compounds, ibotenic acid and muscimol. These compounds pass intact out of the body in urine. Historical and ethnographic sources indicate that some Evenki people have a traditional practice of consuming Amanita muscaria mushrooms, often in shamanic rituals. Whether or not such practices were widespread among the Evenki themselves, they illustrate how powerful natural substances could be integrated into shamanic frameworks that already relied on rhythmic drumming, chanting, fasting, and isolation to transform consciousness. In all cases, the altered state is not pursued for mere novelty. Its value lies in its capacity to open channels of communication with other than human persons, and to access knowledge or power needed for the community's survival. The Evenki and broader Tungusic traditions of which they are a part thus contribute several key threads to the tapestry of Siberian shamanism. The forest-rooted image of a layered cosmos, the central axis as a tree or ladder, the animal helper as guide and ally, the initiatory ordeal of dismemberment and rebirth, and the controlled use of altered states of consciousness to mediate between worlds. From the tundra of the Nenets to the forests of the Evenki, we have seen how dreams, drums, and dangerous initiations bind human communities to a living, multi-layered cosmos. But Siberian shamanism does not stop at hunting camps deep in the taiga. In the next phase of our journey, we turn to the Yakut, also called the Sakha or Sakha peoples, where sky gods, seasonal festivals, and complex pantheons transform shamanic practice into something that begins to look like a bridge between nomadic ecstasy and imperial religion. Among the Yakut or Sakha of northeastern Siberia, the shaman stands inside a complex cosmos where divine powers, clan spirits, and underworld forces all claim their share of human attention. Yakut is the Russian name or exonym for the Sakha people, who call themselves Sakha. To understand how Siberian Shamanism begins to intersect with later Central Asian and even imperial religious currents, the Sakha world is a crucial turning point. In Sakha practice, the shaman does not stand apart from society, but moves within a dense web of kinship, feast days, and sacred stories. Their rituals tap into a pantheon where sky gods, ancestor spirits, and underworld beings all demand ritual attention. As we enter the world of the Sakha, pay attention to how shamanic journeys now intersect with large public festivals, mythic epics, and ideas about destiny and cosmic law. The Sakha settled along the great rivers and forest steppe zones of northeastern Siberia, practicing horse and cattle breeding alongside hunting, fishing, and limited agriculture. Their environment differs from the open tundra or deep taiga of the Nenets and Evenki. Here the year revolves around intense winters and brief but fertile summers that support pastures and cultivated plots. In this setting, Sakha cosmology describes a universe divided into multiple upper, middle, and lower worlds, governed by a high sky deity and populated by a host of benevolent and malevolent beings. Human life unfolds in the middle world, where clan ancestors, local spirits, and the powers of nature continually interact with the affairs of people, herds, and fields. Sakha cosmology is more symbolically ordered and lineage-centered, while Nenets and Evenki cosmology is more ritual, experiential, and spirit interactive. The shaman, known as an Oyun, operates as an intermediary within this stratified system, negotiating with gods and spirits on behalf of individuals and communities, and maintaining a dynamic equilibrium between celestial order and the chaos of illness, misfortune, or spiritual attack. At the heart of Sakha religious life is a hierarchy of beings, with a supreme sky deity presiding over the upper worlds. This idea of a single Sakha sky deity is absent in the cosmologies of the Nenets and Evenki. This Sakha sky deity is called Ai, considered the chief creator and ruler of the upper world, associated with the sun, celestial order, and ancestral spirits. Ai functions as the organizing principle of the cosmos, unlike the more diffuse sky spirits of the Nenets and Evenki, providing a hierarchical and genealogical structure to Sakha myth. Beneath this high god are multiple classes of benevolent spirits associated with light, fertility, and prosperity, balanced by malevolent or ambivalent entities dwelling in the lower regions and in liminal spaces of the middle world. Like the Nenets and Evenki, in Sakha cosmology, humans live between these poles, constantly exposed to influences from above and below, and their well-being depends on maintaining proper relationships through offerings, taboos, and ritual observances. The Oyun shaman is called when those relationships break down, when unexplained illness strikes, when livestock die, when misfortune clusters around a household, or when ominous dreams suggest the intrusion of harmful forces. Sakha ritual life is not confined to private ceremonies, but unfolds in large communal gatherings, especially the summer festival known as S.E.E.K. Held at the time of greatest light, around the summer solstice, S.E.E.K celebrates the renewal of life and the generosity of the celestial powers, featuring offerings of fermented mare's milk, recitation of epic poetry, dances, and sometimes shamanic performances. In this context, the shaman may invoke benevolent sky beings to bless the community with fertility, health, and prosperity for the coming year. The festival becomes a moment when the layered cosmos is enacted in public. Songs and invocations call down the presence of upperworld deities, while offerings and dances express human gratitude and dependence. Through such solemn yet celebratory rites, the Sakha community situates itself within a vast ordered universe, governed by cycles, hierarchies, and reciprocal obligations. The Oyun's more focused rituals echo many of the motifs already encountered among Nenets and Evenki shamans, but are elaborated in a distinct Sakha idiom. The cosmos is again imagined as vertically arranged, with the shaman traveling upward or downward along a symbolic axis that may be represented by a tree, a pillar, or the shaman's own body and drum. During ceremonies, the Oyun dons regalia adorned with metal plates, animal figures, and sometimes mirrors, all of which mark the body as a site where different layers of reality intersect. The drum beats out the rhythm of ascent or descent, and the shaman's voice, through songs and invocations, guides the journey and calls out the names and titles of spiritual beings. Helping spirits, many of them in animal form, accompany and protect the Oyun as they cross dangerous thresholds and approach powerful entities that can grant or withhold aid. Initiation into Sakha shamanhood often involves a period of crisis and withdrawal, similar to what is described elsewhere in Siberia. The future Oyun may experience severe illness, strange dreams, or episodes of altered consciousness that set them apart from ordinary people. In dreams or visions, a person might see themselves being taken to other worlds, instructed by spirits, or symbolically dismembered and reassembled, indicating a radical transformation of their identity and destiny. Community elders and existing shamans interpret these experiences as signs of calling, and the person may resist before finally accepting their role. Once initiated, the Oyun becomes responsible not only for individual healings, but for the spiritual health of lineages and larger social units, weaving personal narratives of suffering and transformation into the collective story of the Sakha people. Historically, the Sakha encountered Russian expansion, Orthodox Christianity, and later Soviet policies that brought pressure, suppression, and reinterpretation to their shamanic practices. Christian missionaries and imperial administrators condemned or regulated shamanic rituals, while some elements of Sakha cosmology were reinterpreted in Christian terms. In the Soviet era, open shamanic practice was discouraged or driven underground, yet many motifs survived in folklore, epic poetry, and family traditions. With the collapse of Soviet power, there has been a revival of interest in Sakha heritage, including renewed attention to shamanic practices, S.E.E.K festivals, and older cosmological ideas. Contemporary practitioners may blend traditional motifs with modern spiritual currents, ecological activism, or global neo-shamanic discourse, reflecting both continuity and adaptation. The Sakha utilize natural techniques, rather than a entheogenic sacrament like the Amanita muscaria, to produce altered states of consciousness. These techniques include dance, song, instrumental music, storytelling, and drawing, all expressed through improvisation. The mouth harp, which is called komus by the Sakha, plays a central role in healing. The mouth harp is a lamellophone instrument that consists of a vibrating tongue attached to a metal frame. To make music with it, you press the mouth harp to your lips and sing without voice as you pluck on the metal tongue. Thus, the music of voice and vibration are integrated into one sound. Spirit and substance are unified. Because of its integration of two different musical notes, the mouth harp is used to guide Sakha healing ceremonies to help the soul navigate the journey between worlds and mediate with the spirits encountered there. Seen in a broader Eurasian context, the Sakha world forms a bridge between northern hunting-herding shamanism and the more formalized religious and political systems of Central Asia. In modern esoteric and entheogenic discussions, these Sakha motifs often appear as examples of how visionary ecstasy, cosmology, and communal life can be braided together in a single system. In the Yakut or Sakha world, shamanism rises almost to a level of cosmic configuration, relating sky gods, animals, ancestors, and humans in a finely balanced order. Yet, this is not the end of our story. As we turn now to the Buryat and Mongolic systems of shamanism and tangrism, we begin to see how these shamanic threads are woven into the fabric of steppe empires, mountain cults, and sky-oriented political theology, setting the stage for broader connections across Eurasia. Among the Buryat and other Mongolic peoples, shamanism merges with the veneration of Tengri, the eternal blue sky, and with ancestor cults that reach from individual households to whole lineages and confederations. Here, spiritual ecstasy and political power begin to intertwine, and the shaman's world touches the early architecture of empires. In Buryat and Mongolic traditions, shamans do more than heal individuals or guide hunters. They also speak for entire clans and sometimes for emerging states. Their rituals at mountains, hilltops, and rivers show how the steppe world turns natural features into political and spiritual altars. As we enter this realm, notice how Tengriism begins to bind shamanic vision to questions of law, order, and rightful rule. The Buryat live around Lake Baikal and in surrounding regions, while related Mongolic groups range widely across Inner Asia's grasslands, mountains, and river valleys. The steppe environment is stark and open, with long horizons, dramatic skies, and seasonal cycles that demand mobility and resilience. In this landscape, the dome of the sky is impossible to ignore, and it naturally becomes a primary symbol of divinity, order, and overarching fate. Tengriism, the reverence for Tengri, the eternal blue sky, encapsulates both religious and political ideas. The sky is not only a god, but the source of legitimacy for rulers and the framework within which human and non-human lives unfold. For the Sakha peoples, Ai governs the moral, ancestral, and ritual order of the world, while Tengri here governs cosmic authority, political legitimacy, and the broad law of the sky. Both are sky deities, but one is relational and ethical, the other majestic and legitimizing. Shamanic practice among Buryat and Mongolic peoples takes shape within this sky-oriented vision, mediating between clans, ancestral spirits, territorial deities, and the great overarching power of Tengri. Among the Buryat, shamanism is closely tied to clan organization and ancestral veneration. Each extended kin group recognizes ancestors who continue to exert influence over the living, demanding proper offerings and observance of taboos. Shamans act as specialists who know how to approach these ancestors and other powerful beings, interpreting misfortune as a sign of neglected obligations or broken ritual practice. Rituals might be held at household altars, near sacred trees, or at ovus, stone cairns erected on mountain passes, hilltops, or important crossroads. At these sites, offerings of food, drink, cloth, and sometimes animal sacrifice are made to local deities, ancestors, and the overarching powers of sky and earth. Travelers circle an ovu clockwise, adding stones or symbolic items, recognizing that even transit through a landscape is also a spiritual act. In many Buryat communities, a distinction is drawn between white and black shamans, a categorization that can refer to the types of spirits served, the ritual emphasis, or moral valence ascribed to certain practices. White shamans are often associated with benevolent sky and ancestor spirits, fertility and protection, while black shamans may work with more ambivalent or chthonic beings, dealing with sorcery, curse-breaking, or dangerous forms of power. This distinction illustrates how shamanism in steppe contexts becomes more differentiated and stratified, mapping onto hierarchies of spirits and social roles. It also foreshadows later esoteric systems that divide magical practice into right-hand and left-hand paths, or that distinguish between higher celestial operations and more earthly, perilous forms of sorcery. Tengriism, as it crystallizes among Mongolic and Turkic peoples, unites these shamanic elements into a broader religious and political vision. Tengri, the eternal blue sky, is imagined as a supreme deity who grants favor, fortune, and the right to rule. Khans and chiefs claim legitimacy through Tengri's will, sometimes framed as a kind of heavenly mandate. Below the sky are many other spiritual beings: earth goddesses, local deities of mountains and rivers, clan ancestors, and spirits associated with particular activities or places. Shamans mediate between human communities and this multi-layered pantheon, but now their work can directly affect matters of warfare, alliance, and statecraft. Divination rituals might be consulted before campaigns, and sacrifices at sacred mountains or rivers may seek cosmic approval for political decisions. Ritual practice in this world often centers on outdoor sites that mark intersections of geography and power. Mountains are treated as the abodes of high spirits, their peaks closer to the realm of Tengri. while river sources and passes become thresholds where offerings ensure safe passage or success. Shamans and other ritual specialists lead ceremonies that involve processions, chants, libations, and sacrifices, sanctifying both the land and the political structures built upon it. The sky above, the mountain beneath, and the human community gathered between form a tripartite pattern that echoes the layered cosmology found elsewhere in Siberia, but now with a stronger emphasis on the legitimization of rule and the maintenance of large-scale order. From an esoteric perspective, Tengriism and Mongolic shamanism provide a powerful example of how visionary practices and cosmic symbolism can be integrated into political theology. The sky as ultimate principle anticipates later abstract notions of transcendence in philosophical and religious thought, while the idea of a ruler chosen or favored by Tengri resonates with other conceptions of divine mandate, from the mandate of heaven in East Asia to sacral kingship in Indo-European contexts. The shaman in this configuration becomes both a guardian of local spirits and a kind of ritual functionary within a larger cosmic political order, a role that later occult and esoteric traditions will echo in the figure of the magician king or priest sovereign. Yet despite these grander dimensions, the experiential core of shamanism remains. Mongolic and Buryat shamans still undergo initiatory crises marked by illness, visions, and symbolic death and rebirth. They still rely on drums, costumes, and spirit helpers, and they still enter altered states of consciousness to diagnose and treat disorders seen as rooted in broken relationships with spirits or in magical aggression. In some cases, practices involving intoxicating beverages or substances are integrated into these rituals, not as the main focus, but as one among several methods for loosening ordinary consciousness and opening channels to non-human intelligences. The emphasis stays on responsibility and risk. Powerful experiences are sought not for private ecstasy alone, but for the sake of community health, prosperity, and cosmic balance. Buryat and Mongolic traditions also interact with Buddhism, especially Tibetan and Mongol forms, resulting in complex layers of syncretism. Buddhist lamas and shamanic practitioners may coexist, compete, or blend their practices, with some rituals incorporating Buddhist deities and mantras alongside older spirit cults. This interaction introduces new cosmological maps, ritual techniques, and ethical codes, further enriching and complicating the shamanic landscape. One example of this overlap can be found in the following. The kadak is a traditional ceremonial scarf used in both Tengriism and Tibetan Buddhism that symbolizes purity, compassion, goodwill, auspiciousness, and respect. From the standpoint of comparative esotericism, this syncretism offers a laboratory for seeing how visionary practices adapt when they encounter scriptural religions with sophisticated metaphysics and ritual technologies. Elements of tantric visualization, mantra recitation, and mandala cosmology can coexist with, or overlay, older patterns of mountain worship, sky veneration, and ancestor cults. As the Buryat and Mongolic world demonstrates, Siberian and Inner Asian shamanism is not locked in a timeless primitive past. It evolves, absorbs, and negotiates with powerful trans-regional traditions like Buddhism, and with the demands of empire and statecraft. The result is a spectrum of practices, from intimate household rites to grand public ceremonies at sacred mountains, all under the overarching gaze of Tengri's sky. In this setting, shamanic patterns like vertical journeys, initiatory death and rebirth, animal helpers, and the use of altered states become building blocks for larger ideological structures that will, in turn, influence or parallel developments in neighboring regions. By the time we reach Buryat and Mongolic Tengrism, shamanism has become a language, not just of healing and hunting, but of law, divine kingship, and cosmic order. But the same core motifs are still there. Layers of the universe, spirit allies, and visionary trials, now woven into a life of empires and syncretic religions. In the next stage of our exploration, we'll look sideways to the Korean Mu and Ainu practices, to see how neighboring cultures echo, reshape, and sometimes quietly receive these Northern and Inner Asian shamanic patterns. Next, we step horizontally from Inner Asia into Korean Mu and Ainu traditions, where spirit mediums, animal persons, and layered worlds play out in agrarian villages and coastal hunting communities. By comparing these neighboring systems with what we have seen in Nenets, Evenki, Sakha, and Tengriism, the shared structure of a broader shamanic cosmos begins to emerge. In the Korean peninsula, long before the dominance of Confucian courts and Buddhist monasteries, village life revolved around a dense web of spirits inhabiting mountains, rivers, households, and ancestral lines. On the surface, Korean Muism looks very different from reindeer herders on the tundra or horse breeders under Tengri's sky. Yet, when we look at how the Korean shaman or priestess, called a mudong, moves between human and spirit worlds, or how the ceremonial rites, called kut, dramatize a layered cosmos of gods, ancestors, and wandering souls, deep structural affinities appear. These religious specialists, known as mudong, are often women who act as mediums, healers, and ritual leaders, and their central rite, the kut, is a complex ceremony in which the mudong invites spirits to descend, possess, or communicate using song, dance, costume changes, offerings, and sometimes acrobatic movements. The Korean kut is held for many reasons: healing illness, resolving misfortune, blessing a new home or business, or appeasing restless spirits. But its basic structure nearly always stages a negotiation between visible and invisible communities. The mudong prepares a ritual space with offerings of food, drink, fruit, rice cakes, and paper decorations, transforming an ordinary courtyard or room into a microcosm where deities and ancestors can be hosted. Through drumming on a drum called bok, singing, and dance, the mudong gradually enters an altered state in which spirits are believed to ride or possess the medium, speaking through her voice, accepting offerings, or demanding further reparations. Different segments of the ritual call down different beings: high gods, local tutelary spirits, historical generals, tragic female figures, or angry ghosts who have died unjustly. In this complex pantheon, one can recognize a familiar vertical structure. There are lofty celestial deities analogous to sky beings in Tengriism or Sakha religion, local and household spirits comparable to territorial masters in Nenets and Evenki worlds, and underworld or wandering spirits of the dead, reminiscent of lower world inhabitants in Siberian cosmologies. The mudong's body, adorned in brightly colored robes in the hanbok style, becomes the axis mundi linking these layers, much as the Siberian shaman's drum, costume, and tent pole connect upper, middle, and lower realms. The kut sequence of descent, possession, bargaining, and departure mirrors the shaman's journey. Instead of a solitary trance in a dark tent, the Korean version is a vivid public drama in which the whole community witnesses and participates in the negotiation. Initiation into Korean Muism also follows a classic shamanic pattern of crisis and calling. Many mudong describe a period of intense suffering known as shinbyong, or spirit sickness, marked by physical illness, hallucinations, dreams, and psychological turmoil that resist ordinary medical treatment. Only when the afflicted person accepts the call to become a mudong, often confirmed through a ritual of initiation, does the sickness ease. This bears a strong resemblance to the initiatory illnesses of the Evenki, Sakha, and Buryat shamans, where dismemberment and reassembly by spirits symbolize a radical reconfiguration of the self. In both cases, what outsiders might pathologize as breakdown is reinterpreted by the tradition as the painful birth of a new kind of person, one whose embodied permeability to spirits becomes a communal resource rather than a private curse. Korean Muism also interacts with elite religious systems in ways that parallel Buryat shamanism's entanglement with Buddhism. Confucian scholars and state officials often disdained mudong as superstitious, yet members of the same elite might privately consult them in times of crisis. Buddhist and Taoist motifs entered Kut symbolism, just as Buddhist deities and mantras entered Mongolic rituals. The result is a layered religious field in which shamanic, ethical, and philosophical strands coexist and blend, shaping a uniquely Korean synthesis. From a comparative esoteric standpoint, Korean Mu shows how a shamanic grammar, including possession rights, a layered cosmos, and initiatory illness, can be woven into a literate, urban, and philosophically complex culture without losing its core experiential patterns. Far to the north and east, across the Sea of Japan, and along the coasts and rivers of Hokkaido and nearby islands, the Ainu developed their own distinctive way of living with spirits. In Ainu thought, the world is full of kamui, spiritual beings who appear to humans in the form of animals, plants, tools, or forces like fire and wind. Bears, salmon, owls, and many other species are not just resources. They are divine visitors, temporarily inhabiting fleshly bodies, who must be sent back to their own world with proper rituals. Human prosperity depends on receiving these visiting kamui, treating them with respect, and returning them in good order so that they will continue to come. Within this framework, ritual specialists and elders guide ceremonies that look, in structural terms, strongly shamanic, even if the vocabulary and emphasis differ from Siberian models. These ritual specialists utilize ritual tools including ceremonial sticks, knives, and ritual bowls. Offerings are made through inau, which are carved wooden ritual implements, and through spoken words that acknowledge the intentions and status of the spirits addressed. They play music on a tonkori, a plucked string instrument, and on small traditional Japanese plucked idiophones made of bamboo called mukuri, similar to the mu jaw harp, along with rattles. They dress in autush garments made of woven bark cloth with embroidered geometric patterns, headbands, and ritual sashes. In the famous bear send-off ritual, a bear is raised in the village, honored and then sacrificed, its spirit returned to the kamui realm with gifts and praise. This is not simply a hunt, it is a carefully staged exchange between worlds, with the bear as a divine guest whose departure must be as ceremonious as its arrival. Similar logic governs salmon rituals and other ceremonies, where animal persons are thanked, feasted, and dispatched so that their kin will continue to visit human communities. The boundary between human and animal, like the boundary between visible and invisible, is therefore porous and negotiated through ritual. The Ainu cosmos is also vertically and horizontally structured. There are upper realms of gods, a middle human world, and lower regions with pathways of movement between them. The hearth in an Ainu home is a sacred center through which communication with kamui is focused, recalling the Nenets and Sakha hearth as cosmic pivot. While not always focused on a single, highly marked shaman figure in the Siberian sense, Ainu ritual life clearly relies on people with specialized knowledge of myths, songs, and correct procedures for engaging the spirit world. When Ainu practices are set alongside those of Nenets, Evenki, Sakha, Buryat, and Korean Mu, a familiar pattern comes into view. The world is populated by other than human persons. Animals are often central mediators of spiritual power. Ritual specialists shoulder the burden of negotiating with these beings. And the cosmos is imagined as layered, with key thresholds marked by fire, poles, ladders, or pathways. Differences in ecology, be it the tundra, taiga, steppe, rice fields, or coastal rivers, produce different pantheons and ritual forms. Yet the same deep grammar of reciprocity, initiation through crisis, and altered states of consciousness appears again and again. For scholars of esotericism and entheogenic traditions, these parallels suggest that what is often treated as shamanism may be best understood as a family of related solutions to this question. How can humans survive and thrive in a world where consciousness and agency are not uniquely human properties? By following the trail from Nenets to Evenki to Sakha, Buryat and the Korean Mu and Ainu systems, we begin to see a pattern that is larger than any one people or place. Each of these practices names their own spirits, tells their own myths, and develops their own ritual arts, yet the same structural answers keep appearing. In our next video, we will explore how these same colors appear in altered hues and more formal doctrinal patterns in the tradition of Zoroastrianism, where a high god, ordered heavens, and a moralized struggle between beneficent and destructive forces take center stage. Zoroastrian priests are not shamans, and their fired temples are not tundra tents. Yet both worlds share an underlying concern with cosmic structure, rightful relations between beings, and the role of specially prepared individuals in maintaining the fragile equilibrium of existence. Here, sky gods become more abstract, moral dualism sharpens, and the battle between order and chaos is written into cosmic law. The layered heavens, guardian spirits, and concern for right relationship that we have seen in Siberian Shamanism reappear in a new key, framed by sacred texts, priestly lineages, and imperial ambitions. By placing shamanic Siberia and Zoroastrian Iran side by side, it becomes possible to see how human beings across vast distances have wrestled with these same fundamental questions. What holds the world together? What breaks it apart? And how can a finite human, fragile yet conscious, participate in the work of keeping the cosmos alive and in balance? Join us next time as we move from the frozen tents, forests, and tundras of Siberian shamanism to the fire-lit temples and star-mapped heavens of Zoroastrianism, tracing how an ancient concern for spirits, sky, and cosmic order takes on a new world-shaping form. Where will this journey take us after Zoroastrianism? Like and subscribe to find out. Thank you for watching. Find more at joinseek.org.